Somebody had commented on my channel this morning and they said they updated to the Legend 1.09 and they're not able to ground balance their machine. And I got a question for you. Does your machine really need to be ground balanced? You know, take this for instance right here, right? I have a smaller coil here, so it's not going to be, it's not going to have to process a lot of ground. It has a smaller footprint, so it's not seeing as much ground. So I have not ground balanced this new version. There's just no need for it because it's not making noise, right? I don't have a negative ground balance. I don't have a positive ground balance. It's neutral. And usually with multi-frequency machines, they have a wide threshold of ground balance because each frequency needs a different ground balance, right? The higher frequencies have a different ground balance than the lower frequencies, and I'll show you that here in a minute with the Deus one. The Deus one is it's easier to understand it because that's just a single frequency machine, and it's very sensitive to the ground, extremely sensitive to minerals and the ground. In my soil, my ground is really dead here right now. The minerals are not active because it hasn't rained. It actually did rain a little bit yesterday. But listen to the detector. I will turn my volume up all the way here so you guys can hear it. Listen to it. Right. It's on. Right. No noise whatsoever. Now I'll ground balance it. I think this is the first time I think this is my second time ever ground balancing it. The numbers are changing very slowly. 17, 16, right? Didn't really change much, but I can go in my ground balance and change that manually, right? I'll go up high, right? Listen to it, right? It's a positive ground balance, right? I'm getting some ground noise as I'm pushing closer to the ground, so my ground balance is off, right? I'll go up really high with it. Right? If your machine is doing that, your machine needs to be ground balanced, right? It's not liking the ground balance right there. If your machine is making no noise as you press it down the ground, you're good to go, right? And I've never had a problem with ground balance I've never had a problem with ground balance in this machine, right? Look at that, no noise. Now I'll go down really low. I'll go down really low. I'll go down to 1, 0. Now listen to it. It's making noise as I pull it off the ground. It's a negative ground balance. And I like a negative ground balance, but this machine is performing just fine at a neutral ground balance. So I'll just turn this machine off here. Now I'll go with the Deus 2. I'll try the Deus 2 on this next. All right. This is a very sensitive, powerful machine. All right. I'll just turn it on here. And the Deus machines have to be ground balanced. They have to be ground balanced, especially the Deus 2. Watch, listen to it. See? Listen to all the ground noise. Listen to all these little bits of crap. Just minerals in the ground, right? Right. This is sensitive full tones here. Listen to it. So with multi-frequency on the Deus 2, you cannot adjust your ground balance because it would have to adjust the ground balance on both frequencies, right? Or however many frequencies is running when you're in multi-frequency. And it just cannot do that. You cannot manually adjust that. So you can only grab it, right? You can only grab it or track it. Grab it. I'm gonna grab it here, right? Listen to the humming, right? Listen to it. it's positive there. See? I have my, it's 83 ground balance, right? Now listen to it. I don't have my finger on the button. Listen to it. It's quiet now, right? It's humming just a little bit. It's giving me a little bit of feedback, but it's not too bad because my soil here is so dry. Once it becomes wet, that's when I really have a lot of problems ground balancing my machines. So I'll go, because I cannot get a positive and negative ground balance on the Deus 2 in multi-frequency, right? And with the Legend, I can in multi-frequency. I was in field 2 there on that one, and I'll show you the HF coil here. The reason why I like the HF coil, because I can give it a negative ground balance here, right? And I like a negative ground balance, right? You can push down a little bit more. You can punch in the ground a little bit more. Listen to it. Listen to it. A positive ground balance right there, right? You can hear a lot of ground noise, right? It's not ground balanced, right? Now I'll quiet it up here. With the Deus 1, there's no ground grab for it, so you got to adjust it manually, or you can pump it, but you have to do it a different way. So I'll go down. Listen to it. I'm pushing the ground balance manual down, and it's reading at 83, so my mineral bar is all the way up on the right side. When I pump the coil, my mineral bar is all the way up. See the mineral bar right there? I don't know if you can see it, but the mineral bar is all the way up, right? And I'm getting closer to the neutral, right? Let's go down a little more. Right there. See, that's neutral. It's making no noise, right? It's making no noise. Nice and stable. Right? Nice and stable. Now I'll go down just a little bit here. Negative ground balance, right? See how it's making noise as I pump it? As I lift the coil off the ground, that's a negative ground balance. But it can make it really unstable. It can make it really unstable if you have a negative ground balance, because if you go over any varying ground, it's going to be really unstable. So you can't go too far. You know, I'm three numbers off here, off of my neutral, so that's a long way off. I just like it just a little bit neutral, like right there, right? That's acceptable, right? That's acceptable. But that's a negative, right? I'm getting ground noise as I'm pumping my coil. And if it's positive, you get a noise as you're pushing the ground. If it's negative, you get noise coming off the ground. But this machine doesn't have multi-frequency. It doesn't have FMF. So it's a little bit easier to understand how that works. And with the Deus 1, the ground balance on this single frequency. It's the threshold, or that window of ground balance is really fine. So you're gonna have to ground balance every once in a while. You know, you're gonna have to change your ground balance a little bit. With the multi-frequency platform, it has a wide window, it has a wide threshold of ground balance, so you're not having to ground balance a lot with a multi-frequency machine. So it can be more stable as you're going around. And when it's in multi-frequency and you ground balance and you ground grab, it has a wider threshold because you have multiple frequencies that can be affected by changing ground, right? I don't know how many frequencies these machines are running, these multi-frequency machines. Could be 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know how many frequencies. They don't tell you that. So, but with the Deus 2, you cannot manually adjust that ground balance, and the Deus 2 is very sensitive to changing soil conditions, especially if you have your stabilizer. If you have your stabilizer down at 1, You know, it can be really, really shaky. You know, the stabilizer on the Deus 2 makes a humongous difference when the soil's wet, or if the soil's changing, especially when you're when it first becomes wet after the long dry season. I had quite a few issues with it when it first started raining after the dry winter, and I just had to adjust it. You know, have to learn how to stabilize a machine, but I can't manually adjust the Deus 2 the ground balance there. And with the Legend, I just don't need to ground balance the machine, right? There's no need for it. If your machine is not making noise, there's no need to ground balance it, right? If it's not making noise on as you're pumping the coil, there's no need to ground balance, right? And I've been hitting on deeper targets with this smaller coil. Before, when I first started using the Legend, when I had the big coil on, I was having to ground balance because the soil was wet. But you saw that. You can manually adjust the Legend to negative and positive ground balance when you're in multi-frequency. I don't know how much good it does, but you know, when I try to ground grab with the Legend, it doesn't really change much. It doesn't change the ground balance. So I think it's just right from the factory, you know, a lower ground balance. But it changes over time. You know, once your soil becomes wet, you're gonna have to ground balance differently, right? That's why I don't track with any machines. I've tried tracking with all my machines. None of them have worked in my soil because it changes so much. You know, my really dense clay, I have spots where dense clay, really loose clay, soft soil, hard compacted clay, and it just changes from every 10 feet. So if I'm tracking and swinging fast over my clay here, it won't adjust the ground balance. With if you're in tracking mode on any machine, you have to swing slow, right? So it can catch up to that tracking. And you're gonna miss some targets. You're gonna miss some targets, and it's gonna be a little bit erratic at times if you're in tracking mode, and it will eat the batteries up. And sometimes when you press the soil pressure, pump your coil, it's gonna take a minute for it to actually engage, or to get a good ground grab when it's tracking. You know, if you pump your coil in a really hot spot or hot ground, and then go over some neutral ground, it's gonna start making some noise anyway, no matter what. But if you're in tracking, you just never know when it's gonna be tracking, when it's gonna go into ground balance your machine. So, and the tracking doesn't work when you're swinging fast like me, right? If you're swinging fast, don't track. Well, thank you for watching.